Welcome to Oakville Matters. Our city likes to call itself a town and feel like a village. We're warm, friendly, and engaging people. We like to stay in touch with each other. We work together to grow harmony, safety, and prosperity for everyone. Here's the question we're answering on today's show. How do we protect the character of our stable, established neighborhood streets where we live, while the province changes planning and zoning rules to encourage intensifying everywhere in their effort to solve the housing supply emergency? Joining us to help answer this important question are the leaders of the town's urban planning team. We have Neil Garbe, the commissioner. We have Gabe Charles, the director, and we have Geoff Abma, the senior planner. And he has particular focus on Midtown, which is one of the many places that will be growing. But as I said the other day, at maybe in the next, we have to do the target for Midtown, guys, is 2031. So I'm pretty sure that we could say that the rest of the town is also going to grow, not just Midtown. So thank you very much for your service to our town and for joining us today. And Commissioner Garbe, what is Oakville's share of the 2031 target set by the province for new homes?
Well, that number is 33,000 units by 2031. And what it did, the province did, is really compressed our expectation of growth into a much shorter time frame. So it heightens the urgency of making sure that we have our community plans in place and set for the next number of years.
Somebody pointed out to me the other day that since 1841, Oakville has doubled its population 23 times. So that tells me that Oakville does grow. We may double our population again someday. Director Charles, how does the town's 2009 official plan protect the character of our stable, established neighborhood streets where we live?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The 2009 official plan, the Livable Oakville plan, was unanimously approved by council back in 2009. And it was really premised on some foundational principles of ensuring that our established neighborhoods maintain the character that they have and all the components that relate to that character, whether it's the existing tree canopy, maintaining. The urban structure has been a great tool that we have been able to rely upon. It really does set the foundation for where growth will be accommodated throughout the municipalities. So with the intent of directing that growth to our urban growth center, which is Midtown, or other centers like Uptown or the hospital district in our corridors. So that's Dundas and Trafalgar, et cetera. With the intent being that if we can push the majority of growth to areas where we have planned for, where we have supporting infrastructure, whether that's the pipes, the roads, the transit, being able to do that lessens the demand that we'll see on our established neighborhoods. So we're not into these situations where on the fringes of communities or neighborhoods, for example, we have the pressure to, say, remove a half dozen single detached houses to put in 18, 20 townhouses, for example. By saying that that type of growth and that type of intensification is best served in other locations, that allows us to maintain the type of character that we have in our established neighborhoods.
Okay, so Mr. Abma, what is Midtown going to feel like over the next 8 years as we move to meet that 2031 provincial deadline?
Well, the vision for Midtown is pretty straightforward. It's about creating a transit supportive and complete community in which people will be able to live, work, and play in that community. It's really about putting people and uses, so stores and jobs, all in an area where it makes it really easy to walk, bike, or take transit to do most of what you want to do in life or during a day. And it's intended to have really attractive streetscapes, so places down at ground level in between buildings that we'll have lots of vegetation, lots of space for people, oriented towards people to hang out and walk, and as well as being surrounded by really well-designed buildings, which are mixed-use buildings, where all these uses, where you can live and work and buy things and go to cultural community facilities, all within a really close distance. And then it will be connected to the rest of Oakville and the rest of the GTA.
Well, all right. how big will it be by 2031? How many housing units does anybody think is physically possible to be built? You know, given the economy, given the market, and given the flow of applications.
Sure. So we have applications currently under review for Midtown that represent, I would say, about 11 to 12,000 people in jobs. So that would get us to essentially what the province is wanting us to meet, of about 20,000 people in jobs by the year 2031. So that's the minimum that the province has asked us to get to, and I think we could realistically achieve that, you know, by 2031, or perhaps a little bit beyond that.
Okay, so let's relate that to the 33,000 housing units that we need to facilitate by 2031. If you're talking 11 or 12,000 residents, or I'm not sure, the number went by really fast, and in this kind of environment, it might be 2 people. If it were 2 people per unit, we're talking 6,000 units, 6,000 units. What are we talking?
Yeah, I think that's a fair estimate. You know, I would say between 6,000 and 8,000 units is probably what's represented by the applications that we're currently reviewing. And, you know, and we're looking also to get the servicing in place to support those units over the next number of years. So I think you're in the right ballpark with that number of units.
So we're even as we're looking at around 6,000 for Midtown, we got 27,000 other units going into other areas in town. And I guess I'll turn back to Director Charles. In theory, the other 27,000, are they going to be predominantly directed to other growth nodes as opposed to our stable established neighborhoods?
That's a fair assumption, Mr. Mayor. So we still have some greenfield lands available north of Dundas, around Burnhamthorpe. So there will continue to be the grade-related housing that we know that the market is really demanding these days. So that's the singles, the towns, etc. That will continue to happen over the next 8, 10 plus years to build that out. But the balance of that, of the additional 33,000 units that Neil was mentioning, will be directed to our centers and our corridor. So that includes Uptown, that includes along to the Trafalgar corridor as well. There's plans afoot to look at Palermo north of Dundas, as well as really start to develop around the hospital. So there's the opportunities in those areas, and what we have identified for council previously is that with the urban structure, we're able to easily accommodate those units within our centers and our corridors, and that's where we will be directing that growth. And that's frankly where the development industry is looking as well. I think what Oakville has really seen over the last few years is a transition towards having a much better mix of apartment units, whether it's in mid-rise buildings, taller buildings, that is not all driven by grade-related housing.
Right. And, you know, the other day I had an interesting conversation with an acquaintance who wondered, why did we need any height at all? Why didn't we just use general density? And I told my friend, well, we do both. And as a matter of fact, we're required to do both. And all the general density in the world won't relieve us of the need for the high density in order to meet the targets that we've been handed. And my friend challenged me, said, well, give me an example of this general density. And I said, well, remember Cudmore's? And he went, oh, I oppose that. So it suddenly came home to him that he was for general density instead of towers, as long as it wasn't general density that he didn't like. So, you know, that's the conundrum that council and you as staff, urban planning leaders, and we as council have to face and grapple with. Now, Commissioner Garbe, there's a new law. I guess it's the status of a law. The province used to have 2 companion documents. One was called the Provincial Policy Statement, although it didn't say what the policy was about. And the other was an act of the legislature called the Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And as I understand it, the province is seeking public comment, and we're offering it. We're not being shy about that. On their effort to consolidate those 2 documents into a new document called the Provincial Planning Strategy, I guess it is. Is that the name? Provincial Planning Strategy? And what I'm curious about is I think there's something in there that says that its policies are in full force and effect, even if the official plan of a municipality has not been updated to conform to that. Can you explain how that works?
So in Ontario, we have a tiered planning system, and the province is the grantor of all authority, and therefore their plans take precedence. So regardless of and it tiers down from there to a regional plan and down into the local plans, and they all have to conform, but they all have to conform upwards. So if there's a change in provincial legislation, it automatically becomes the requirement of the local plans, the regional plan and the local plan. So any change that affects the provincial legislation automatically is de facto a policy of the local plan. And then we go through an exercise to Oakvilleize it. However, the intent and practice needs to conform and hold the provincial direction.
Well, keeping in mind that over the last 2 years, at the upper tier of our municipality, the region of Halton, we spent 2 years conforming the region's official plan upward to Bill 108, I think, or an earlier act of the legislature, and we barely finished that when a new slew of legislation ensued, and the local Oakville official plan, we were given a year after our deadline to conform upward to that set was July 1st this year. And we worked in tandem with the region to be more efficient. So my question, and I think a lot of people's question, is when in the old days, like before today, if there was a new provincial policy and it takes 2 years to update an official plan, apparently, to conform and everything, because all the studies you have to do. By the way, provincial rules, they have to do them. And the consultation, by the way, provincial rules, they have to do it. So it takes time. During that time, in the old days, before today, how did new policies behave? Like, did you still have to conform upward, and you were deemed to be complying? And if you didn't make a decision, if you made a decision that wasn't, it was square with your OP, but not square with the higher level, you were in trouble? Can you explain how that worked?
So it not in trouble in a penalizing sense, but in terms of what the tests would be if someone wants to initiate a development application. So if someone presents,
By trouble, I just meant bound to lose at the whatever they're calling the Ontario Municipal Board this year.
That's exactly where it's heading, Mr. Mayor. Is there's no penalty per se, but there is penalties that are imposed by the Ontario Land Tribunal if you
like a flag on the play.
It's a flag on the play. That's right. So regardless of what your local plan says, the test that needs to be conformed to is the upper tier plans. So if something is restrictive in the local plan but is permissive in a provincial plan, that would take precedence. And if a matter went to the land tribunal, the evidence would all be its conformity to the highest level, which is the provincial policies.
Okay, well, thanks for that. And you did, that was a pretty clear answer. So I'm going to give you the other really tough question, which is how does the government of Ontario enforce its growth legislation and its regulations and its orders?
So one of the recent changes is that the province actually took over the approval of the local plans. It used to be in recent past, before yesterday, as you would say, Mayor Burton, that the approval authority was in our case Halton Region. So that's the first piece. So if the province has the ultimate decision-making, so the process goes through, an official plan is made, it goes to the upper tier, and now it goes to the province. The minister would give the approval or introduce modifications as the ministry sees fit. That is a one path. The other path is something that we've seen as recently as Friday, where the minister decides that it's in the best interest of the province and to fulfill its mandate to impose through a zoning order the requirements of the local municipality. So it's a zoning that trumps everything else. The minister writes a regulation, and it comes into force as he sees fit, and becomes the rule of the local municipality.
I remember learning as a student in the government module that there was a principle that Parliament is supreme, and a minister, by extension, has absolute authority if he wants to use it. And I guess Mississauga has discovered that several times, because I think Friday's pair of ministerial orders was number 5 and number 6 in recent times. So then, what about the people who say, well, let's just ignore it? How do they actually make it stick? Does the applicant suddenly have an absolute right to go ahead and build, and we're powerless?
Yeah, well, it depends on largely what the zoning order says, but in this case, in the most recent case, and they do have as of right permissions for unlimited density and unlimited height. That was part of the order. So it establishes your rights to develop. Some are more prescriptive in saying you can build something like a hospital in a certain location. But others are more general, and this is a broad sweeping introduction of land use planning tools. So in this case, that's what it is.
So this is a really interesting case, because it's this Lakeview site is 176 acres and Midtown's 250 acres, give or take. So it's smaller than our Midtown, and there's a heck of a lot more. Well, unlimited density, unlimited height, except for the front row by the lake. That reminds me that the other day I was with the mayor of Mississauga at a meeting, and she told the rest of us mayors that Mississauga is totally on board for growth in their urban growth center, and there they have no limit on density and no limit on height, she said. And she was, I think she was expressing some regret at the concept that unlimited approach would be extended to places that don't have the transit and other supporting infrastructure that an urban growth center would have. So now, Mr. Abma, I'm curious to know more about the timeline, more about what we can expect and when we can expect to see it. I have the impression from looking at the way the rest of Oakville has grown over the last 30 years that it seems to me it's always been slower than we thought it was going to be. Can you speak to that? I mean, one of the things that maybe you could draw out is, to build a building, the builder has to pre-sell 80% of the units, and if he doesn't pre-sell 80% of the units, he's not even going to be able to build it. So start there, please.
No, for sure. So building out Midtown will take time. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take years or even decades to evolve and build out. And to your point, the developer does need to, they often need to gather financing, which a lot of it is through pre-sale of their housing, the residential units. But in terms of from the town's perspective and the region's perspective, it's also about planning out the servicing to support those units as they go in. So there's a lot of, let's call it infrastructure, both above ground and below ground, that needs to be built to support Midtown. So that includes roads, that includes pipes, that includes utilities, all those sorts of things. So just in terms of, getting pipes in the ground, that takes a number of years. So that could be, 4 or 5 years before we see the pipes that are needed to support some of the applications that we're seeing. And then once approvals do happen, it takes a few years to actually build the buildings that we're talking about in Midtown. So if you just think about the few applications that we have in, it could be, say 5 to 8 years before we start to see those being completed and people moving in. So development in Midtown will take time. And we always talk about Midtown the plan being a forever plan, right? It's a multi-generational plan. We're talking about our kids' children, and even their children, in terms of how long into the future we're looking in terms of Midtown.
Oh, so in other words, if I hear you correctly, the 6,000 or so housing units that we're contemplating in this first 8 years, they may arrive just in time. In other words, barely be there by 2031. And I hope that'll count for meeting the deadline.
That's correct. It will take time for these units to come in, and it will take time for the people and the jobs to materialize in Midtown, and it's going to slowly evolve over time. And yeah, it'll be, I would say, between 2031 and 2041 is when we're estimating that we might start meeting that provincial target, the minimum target.
Okay, now, Mr. Abma and Director Charles, let's talk about how your plan works to create a pretty and varied skyline, as opposed to a monolith of 100-story towers. How do you put your policies together to get the variety that we like in an urban design?
Sure, I'll take a first stab at that. Part of what we're doing through this this proposed official plan amendment is to govern how much development can go on within Midtown and on certain sites, and not setting a hard and fast, hey, buildings can only be this height. Otherwise, you kind of get a crop top look. It's a matter of someone once said they like the analogy that I've used before about, hey, the policies govern the amount of development, so the amount of clay that you can put, that you can work with. But in terms of how you sculpt that, that's where the urban design direction comes in, and you can get buildings of different heights, slim towers, putting, and how you shape it on the ground to make it a human scale, starts to get a lot of building variety, and that's how you start to get a distinctive skyline for Midtown.
Okay, so how does that work? I mean, what are their policies? When we and members of the public go and read the draft official plan amendment, what should they notice in order to understand how these things come together to prevent? What I'm hearing you say is people can't just copy and paste some density on one particular site onto all the developable land and assume that that's the output.
Sure, there's policy in the official plan in general, but also in Midtown, which really talk about, okay, we want slim towers, so it regulates the floor plate area of that tower. Because what happens is that when you have a slimmer tower, you can start to get more sunlight penetration, limit the shadows that are on the ground. But it also talks about, okay, at the base, what uses are you putting at the ground, so that it's active, it's transparent. There's lots of doors and windows, and a great place to walk along, to create a good environment for people in there. So it's the direction of the policies as well as the urban design direction that the town reviews as applications come in.
Well, thank you. You just really unlocked something for me, which is I don't know if you meant to remind me, but I was suddenly reminded of the rule that you have to read the whole thing in planning, and not just the whole official plan, but all the province's stuff that stacks up on top of it. And so some of the things that will govern how you interpret the Midtown official plan amendment are already in the official plan, and we have to read all of it, not just the amendment. We've got to read the whole official plan with its amendment in order to understand how it works. Is that correct?
That is definitely correct.
All right. So, all right, now let's have a fast free-for-all here. What do the three of you, and just jump in, let's jump in on each other, but what are the most important things we've got to deal with in the new environment that the province has unleashed? I mean, I've been saying to my friends, the province is behaving as if it believes that there is a serious housing supply emergency. And in that environment, and given due regard for how much power the province has, what are the most important things we need to be thinking about over the next 8 years?
So I think the issue is housing affordability, which means we need to move forward on multiple planes. So we need to make sure that our Midtown policies are in place and responsive to certain housing types. We also need to make sure that we're on board with the other growth areas of our municipality as well. The mandate from the province is to accommodate growth, to alleviate or mitigate some of the pressures on housing affordability. So we need to be thinking on multiple planes, and we need to be marching towards that. If I think otherwise, we will be marched upon by the province. So,
well, that's a very, very powerful thought. I've noticed in all of the work that we've done together over the last 17 years that there's always a variety in the planned areas that come before council. It's never a monoculture. There's different sizes, different numbers of rooms, and so on. And I gather that seems to me to make sense, because that way there's choice. My staff and I have been looking at the community profile that the census put out after 2021, and we've noticed that there appear to be in Oakville a gigantic number of empty bedrooms. And I hear from young people and from single older people who are looking for granny flats, and young people who are looking for starter units. I hear from them that we're short on those units, and the community profile that StatsCan has seems to suggest that as well. So what kind of units or what size of units will be built anywhere in a high-rise environment must have something to do with who will buy one. I mean, if I'm a builder and I'm pre-selling units, I haven't built the building. And if I sell a whole bunch of 3-bedroom units, I'm going to build those. And if I sell a whole bunch of singles, I guess I'll build those. Is that how it works?
I'd say it does primarily. The challenge that a number of the builders have is,
and excuse me, we only have 10 seconds, so it's got to be quick.
It is going to be challenging, I think, for builders to be able to have that or offer that full suite of different product type. And so what we're trying to do is ensure that across the entire municipality, there's that option for choice.
Great point. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, and I hope this has been helpful to you, and we'll see you again next time on Oakville Matters. Hello and welcome to Oakville Matters. Our city likes to call itself a town and feel like a village. We're warm, friendly, caring people. That's why we like to stay in touch with each other. We work together to grow our harmony, safety, and prosperity for everyone. And here's the question we're answering on this show. Will free transit for seniors and youth turn out to be a good idea or not? And to help us predict the future on this question, we have Adrian Cowan, who is the director of Oakville Transit, and Phoebe Fu, who is the commissioner of all things infrastructure. I've sometimes introduced you, Commissioner Fu, as the lady who builds and maintains everything. And Adrian, of course, you're the one who moves as many people as possible through our town. Let's set the stage for a discussion of free transit by talking about who already gets a really cheap ride on transit and how much transit do we do anyway? Adrian?
Great question. So in the first part of the question, who gets free transit? Right now, children ages 0 to 12 are able to take transit for free. And this was originally instated as a pilot here in the town of Oakville, which now has become a permanent program for children. In addition to the children, adults also get somewhat of a free ride as when they do transfer to the Go Train, Go bus network as a co-fare, which means any adult that boards an Oakville Transit bus and then transfers onto the Go Train or Go bus system actually gets their Oakville Transit fare reimbursed. So it's technically a free fare for adults already when they participate in the co-fare agreement with Metrolinx.
And this is an evolution of something I remember. It used to be called Go with Gus. Do you remember that? Where it was 75 cents or 85 cents if you made that same trip, and then the province decided, oh, what the heck, free, right?
That is correct. It actually started off as 25, 50, 75 cents, and then eventually Metrolinx said, you know what, let's just go all out and make this something really, really that people would like.
Yeah, and you know, I know people are skeptical of this, but what's the single greatest thing that we can do to fight climate change? Well, it's reduce the cars on the road. And a bus is capable of replacing a lot of cars. You got to use the bus to make that magic happen, of course, and that's a whole nother question. What about our ridership? I know that after the big event that I go back to was when I became mayor. We elected to change our system from a radial system where everything went in and out of the GO stations to a grid system. The idea, and we doubled the number of buses. And the idea was that we were going to really increase service. There's an argument among transit experts that if you want to increase ridership, you got to increase service. And I think we increased the spending on transit by 50%, and ridership went up 25%. So we were very impressed with that gain. Although, you know, you look at when you run that math out, you never get to a really full ridership before you bankrupt yourself. So we needed a new way to approach this. But ridership has been pretty good until COVID. What happened with ridership when COVID hit?
So when COVID hit, ridership went down quite significantly. And it wasn't just here in the town, it was across the entire GTHA. The stay-at-home orders really impacted travel throughout the entire network. And when I mean network, Oakville Transit's part of that, significant actually part of that network. But I'm happy to provide an update where as of last month, we are now reaching 80 to 85% of our pre-pandemic levels, which is quite significant, especially on our system, considering the new travel patterns that we're seeing out on the road. So we've managed to get to 80 to 85%. Now, the nice thing about seeing these numbers so early in the year is that when the warmer months start coming around, which we had a beautiful week, a week or two ago, beautiful sunshine, beautiful weather, those numbers start to creep up. People like to get out more. People like to get onto transit more. We have a few programs where you can bike and bus and kind of make those connections all around. So we are starting to see that increase come back, and the riders are truly happy to be back on the service.
I remember when we once did a promotion of bike and bus years ago. So I went to the bus stop near my home I rode my bike to the bus stop, my little helmet on, and we took photos of me putting the bike on the carryall in the front of the bus, and then we took the bus over to Bronte, and one of the new bike parking spots, they took a car parking spot, turned into a bike parking spot, and I got off the bus at the stop, rode down to there, and that was our jaunt for the day. And I've seen our bus bike carryalls in use, so that's they followed we set a good example that somebody followed it. Let's hope. Now we're also electrifying the fleet, which is a big dream of mine. Half the fleet. We only got enough money for half the fleet. Commissioner Fu, you want to talk about our progress on that? I come from a background of film and television. I started YTV, and film and TV stuff is a lot faster than in any level of government, as far as I can tell. How long is it going to? We have the money to convert half the fleet. How long is it going to take? Give us the lowdown on that.
So we did get some grant from the government to, as you mentioned, electrify half of our fleet. And our plans to do that actually is close to, we should have that done around 2026. So it's fairly close. It's coming around the corner. One of the biggest exciting things that has happened is we already got delivery of our first set of fleet that are electric. And there are specialized, smaller buses that helps with our home to hub or on-demand pilots. And so you'll be seeing them on the road very shortly, sometimes in the spring. And we are on track to order the big conventional buses. We're planning another 15 that's coming sometimes next year. That we'll start to see our first fleet of the larger buses as well. So we also are putting together a program really to contribute to our overall corporate climate action to look at the opportunity and future grant opportunities as well to electrify our entire fleet. So it's a long range process, and we're very excited to going down this road.
Well, yes, well, when I started, I wanted to electrify the fleet, and the staff of the day told me, "Oh, you can't, because we don't have a proper building to house them or maintain them." And they took me and showed me this. I'll describe it as a shack that transit operated out of. And they said, "So, therefore give up on your electric dream." And I said, "Well, all right, we'll just build a proper transit facility. That's obviously step one. And then we'll get the buses." And and Adrian, I hope you like your digs, because we spent a lot of money on that, and we had help from both the federal and the provincial government. It's good to. We put up half, and they put up a quarter each. I think is important for people to know that Oakville really carries its own weight.
I think that foresight was important, Mayor, that we built a facility that could already receive these electric buses with no issue, and we didn't need to build another facility for it. And we certainly are having the room to put in the electrical equipment, because that we do need equipment to support those new buses as well. Yeah. So those are all part of the overall long range plan that yourself and others had that foresight to build a beautiful facility today.
So let's bridge from this to how big our system is, the transit system, and then it's part of a larger transportation system. I'm gonna grandiloquently call all of our streets and roads and sidewalks and bridges, and that's all a transportation system, including the buses. And I don't think people understand how huge that is. Do you want to give us a few examples of just how big it is?
Of course, our entire transportation network system, which we do plan under our transportation master plan for the future and in the near term, not only include roads and everybody who uses the road. There is the sidewalk that the pedestrian uses the road, and of course, bike facilities and active transportation facilities for different modes of travel. Transit is actually one of the components that uses the overall road network. And that road network, of course, has different levels of government involved. The highways belongs to the ministry. There's regional roads and then there's local roads.
We're losing your audio, Commissioner Fu. So somebody didn't pay their internet bill, I guess.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's funny. Your audio level just sank down. Adrian, while she works on that, I think you can continue the line she was talking about. The one thing I don't expect you to be able to answer is how many billions of dollars are tied up in our roads, which I think everybody can imagine. But the money that's tied up in transit is just a small part of this giant transportation system is what we're looking to cover here.
And you're absolutely correct. I mean, it's interesting to hear Commissioner Fu's description of the transportation network and the planning that the team is doing. From a transit perspective, it's also part of a network where we can start with our own buses. We have our buses, we have our local routes, and then we get into a higher order, which then connects to other municipalities. With the other municipalities and the cross-boundary travel, we also have a connection into another network, which is the GO Rail and Bus, which is the higher order train and highway bus coaches, which then connects into the broader GTHA. This entire network needs to be planned consistently and together. And the reason being is that we want to make sure the connections are made to make it a lot easier for passengers and our residents to use transit seamlessly and with an integrated vision of getting people where they really need to go.
Yeah, I would not want your headaches trying to make sure that there's a bus at the time people rely on all through its route, and somehow it magically connects with the train, which of course is never late or early. I mean, how to make that work together? I don't know. All my friends who use the GO system, their one request is they want a more perfect meeting of the train and the bus. What progress have we made in that area?
Well, it's interesting, and I do have to give kudos to staff at all levels of the agencies. They have really started coming together to plan and schedule the services. And now, interestingly enough, when a train is operating at a certain frequency, it is tough to get those buses to those stations. However, with the help of our customers, we hear them, we see them, we go out with them and say, what is it that we can help you with? Which connections do you need to make? And then we start planning and designing the network so that at least they begin to connect as one seamless network.
Yeah, from 50 miles up, I was worried that 15-minute electrified GO train service, which is where we're headed, would require us to have 15-minute bus routes, or because that's a lot of trains to meet. And you're talking about, sounds like prioritizing these. Is that what you mean?
Well, yes, and I think it's an important step to getting to that final 15-minute all-day service. The idea here is that we won't be able to make every single train trip. But the idea is when we do make a trip, we will make sure it connects. And that is what makes the system attractive, where the bus that you're getting on will eventually connect to either another bus route or the train, which is set at 15 minutes. So we can have that leverage of really working the schedules to prioritize the train meets that people really need to go to.
All right. Now, I imagine that kids and seniors, as they start to use and enjoy free transit on May 1st, are going to occasionally connect with the GO train in order to entertain themselves in Toronto or some other destination. And I'm wondering what you think the take-up will be of free transit. As you know, I required in the resolution that people have to have a Presto card in order to avail themselves of this. And that's because I think we have to measure it. And how fast will we get good measurements of the use of this?
Well, it is actually really, really nice to know that we do have a system that can count the passengers. We will be able to see what the uptake is fairly quickly. However, I like to give it a month or two to really set the travel patterns. I do have to say we've had a few outreach events where we've given away free Presto card, and to date, we've already given away 1,600 Presto cards just for this event. So that just shows you how many people are really interested and excited about this program starting May 1st. As for the students, they pretty much already have their Presto cards because we do pick them up with our system already. The excitement will be, what do they use the system for after the school? Is it to work, to socialize on the weekends? We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we are preparing. We will have the service ready to go should there be unexpected overloads. That's our greatest goal, is to have these buses full, where we can start sending additional service to get even more people on the system. So in terms of what we suspect that we will have an increase. It may be 20%, it may be 50%, but the true tell will be May 1st and into the summer, where people will be able to experience our system. Even if it's for the first time, they'll be able to do it for free.
Cool. I remember, you reminded me that your predecessor on my first day in office, and he started roughly the same time I did. He said to me, Mr. Mayor, we need to go to council to add a bus to the route that serves Sheridan College and Square One in Mississauga. And I said, why? And he said, well, because there's long lineups of students there, and we don't have enough buses on that route to bring them all over. And so they have to wait a long time to get to the college. And I said, yeah. And when you run a full bus, do you make money or lose money? He said, well, we make money. It's the only time we make money. I said, well, then council's already authorized you to run a transit system. Why don't you have those extra buses on that line already? That's how you run a TV station or a television network. You kind of go, hey, you're leaving money on the table. Go get it. So we've had that can-do attitude here for quite a long time now. Phoebe, I welcome your audio back, I hope.
Yes, I'm back.
Oh, good. This would be a perfect time to branch out to the larger question of the transportation master plan. By way of a setup, we do master plans that plan out 10 years or any length of time. But the idea is that a lot of the things that we do cost a lot of money and take a long time to build, and they last for a long time. So we try to plan ahead. I know, radical idea. And the transportation master plan, we have one already, and it includes all these things we said earlier, but it's good practice to review it every few years. And Commissioner Fu, over to you. What are we doing with our transportation master plan?
We redo a transportation master plan every 5 years. And the reason why we do that, because we know that Oakville is going under rapid change. There's lots of change in growth, demographics, needs. So we are currently embarking in initiating that transportation master plan, and there will be public consultations opportunities in the spring and the summer. What does that transportation master plan actually do though? We look at the roads, the active transportation pieces, the connections with other systems such as transit, regional road network, everything that you see along the road in the entire right-of-way, as we call it technically, from the sidewalks to the multi-use path to how many lanes, they're all completely reviewed for to ensure that we could accommodate growth for Oakville, to accommodate the future need of, say, such as transit ridership. We look at transit priorities. We look at tactics all the way down to signals, stop signs, and safety of our roads. So it is really a master plan to help us plan out the future budget implications, so we could invest into our, I'll call it transportation mobility infrastructure. And transit, as I mentioned earlier, is just a component of that overall system. What's very interesting about the linkages of that transportation master plan is then Adrian on the transit side will operationalize that master plan. Once the decisions of the infrastructure has been made, and once they're built, they're put into the plans for the future. Adrian then can accompany that with the operational plan, with the service levels, how many buses is actually on the route, and all this free transit for youth and seniors is going to really help change the culture of how people choose transit over cars. So really the bottom line is we want people to get off the roads, contribute to our climate action, and get on those transit. And that could be only done when we provide the appropriate infrastructure to support the transit service that is on the road.
So if I understand correctly, the transportation master plan is more, we have a lot of documents that we call plans that tend to be very high level policies. They're very general rather than really, really granular and particular. The transportation master plan, with your illustration that Adrian operationalizes it, can you speak to the degree of generality and high level policy in a transportation master plan versus the fine grain of where does the bus go and when does it show up?
Actually, yeah, so the transportation master have both. It doesn't just have policy, it actually have tactical implementation. So I'll stay on the policy first of all. We want to make sure there's appropriate number of lanes or appropriate priority signals or things like that from an infrastructure perspective to support our growth nodes, the service we want to provide. The policy there's even look at, do we want to have e-scooters? Do we want a different kind of micro mobility? So we do look at some policy lenses of how do we enhance our mobility overall in the long run and have a capital plan to associate and funding opportunities to do that. The tactical side of it is something like such as we're going to talk about traffic calming. We could talk about different priority signals for Adrian, HOV lanes that we actually want to implement. So from the policy of saying that we do want transportation priority for the transit users, the bike users, the pedestrians, all the different things away from cars is our priority from a policy lens. But the actual signals, the roads, the lanes, the paintings, the signs, all of that actually get executed through operationalizing. And the TMP, which is the Transportation Master Plan, actually sets what are we going to do in those tactic level, and the I'll say the residents can feel and see the actual pathways and the bridges and the safety signs and all that stuff that's going to go in.
But whether you have a bus on your street or not, and where Adrian runs a bus route, that's down at his level of, because it's more responsive to market conditions, I hope, right?
Of course, in driving where people, what mode of transportation people want to take. As you mentioned, you take your bike to the bus to the go, and so on and so forth. But the overall system, Adrian just part of that component. The bigger system is everyone's mobility from getting from A to B. And how we get them from A to B have a variety of choices, and that entire system works together coherently, and Adrian's part of that.
So Adrian, I want to talk about what you think and how you work with discovering and achieving opportunities to improve. But before that, I wanted to ask you to explain for people the status of the age-old desire to pay a fare in one place and ride the bus all the way across the GTA. And that has kind of a storied background. Do you want to just sum up for people where we're at today on the one fare in the GTA theory?
Well, work still continues with that initiative. And however, it is nice to be part of the transit agencies that operate within the 905 area. We in the 905, we accept each other's transfer. So you can technically get from point A to point B anywhere in the 905 within 2 hours on one fare.
Just not the 416.
That's correct. That's correct. And that is the big question still to date. However, there is progress with regard to, again, when it comes to the network, the GO Transit and the TTC system as well. We do have many residents here who use Oakville, then go to GO, and then transfer to TTC. So there have been developments with a similar co-fare arrangement as well. But I do have to say, it is very...
Wait, do we have co-fare with TTC?
No, we as an agency don't. However, there is the co-fare, I do believe a co-fare arrangement with the TTC and GO Transit. Yeah. So you can see it's very similar. But But the nice thing is with the agencies around us, when we do our planning, when we do speak with customers, you can get in the city of Mississauga and come into the town of Oakville, enjoy the day, enjoy the waterfront, and go back on transit on that one fare. So that one fare does exist in portion of the GTHA, and happily we are part of that.
Yeah, there was a very funny joint meeting, the first ever joint meeting of the boards of the Metrolinx and the TTC, where they were gonna create this co-fare that the rest of us already had, and they were shocked to discover that it was already there. And the TTC chair erupted when all eyes turned on him for being the skunk at the garden party, and he was very angry about. And we will never do it because you have to pay us. He's running for mayor now, so it'll be fun to see where that goes. We got about a minute left. What's your most important area for improvement? What's the KPI that you watch every day?
From my perspective, it is the ridership. It's very important to understand where people want to go, especially with the new travel patterns. We are seeing that increase, and we are also planning out services accordingly based on the demand of where and when people are using the system. So for me, ridership, get on it with the free initiative. There's an opportunity to go and explore at your leisure as well. There's no time commitment on the free transit for youth and seniors. So please use it as much as possible. We want to see you there. I'll be out on the system as well, welcoming people. So I can't wait to see you on our service. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And Commissioner Fu, thank you for adding the superstructure, the mega view of our system and how it fits into the bigger puzzle. And thank you for joining us today to learn more about our transit system and our plans to make Oakville more mobile. And I hope that if you have any ideas to increase the livability of Oakville, that you'll share them with me, and any suggestions for future topics for the show. I'm easy to reach, mayor@oakville.ca. Here's looking at you, and I hope you're looking at us next time. Thanks for watching.
and welcome to Oakville Matters. Our city likes to call itself a town and feel like a village. We're warm, friendly, caring people, and that's why we like to stay in touch with each other. We work together to grow our harmony, safety, and prosperity for everyone. Here's the question we're answering on this show. How do we keep growing the vitality and the fun of our traditional Main Street shopping areas in Kerr Village, Bronte Village, just like we did for downtown Oakville? Joining us to help answer this important question are the leaders of the business improvement areas for each one. Doug Sams from Kerr Village, Kylie Wilson from Bronte, and Adrian Gordon from downtown Oakville. Thank you to each of you for your service to our town and for joining us today. Doug, Kylie, what did you like about the downtown project?
Well, from my standpoint, what I liked, there were, to me, it was two parts. It was the reconstruction of the 16-mile Creek Bridge and also the downtown project, which brought a continuity, creating an environment that's attractive, welcoming, vibrant, and that's the same thing we'd like to carry across the bridge up down Lakeshore Road and up Kerr Street. And thanks to the mayor and council, that project is underway. We're having a paving project done this year on Kerr Street. We're repairing some curbs and sidewalks. The street will be paved. The long range plan calls for a study for a revitalization. And I think the three areas actually feed off of each other because Kerr Street is a pathway down to downtown as well as into Bronte. So I think it makes us all stronger, and it's a plan for the future. And it brings a great sense of community to Oakville, which we already have, but enhances it to have people shop local, which is very important to our small business in this time.
How about you, Kylie? What did you like about all the changes we made to downtown Oakville?
Downtown Oakville, I have to say, because we visit so often as a family, the thing that I've noticed most was the traffic calming measures that were put in place. And just the element really does cause cars to move through quite slowly. And of course, just those expanded sidewalks allowing for a really safe walkability. It's very bike friendly as well. And of course, just those expanded sidewalks allowing for that beautification to take place has just been something that we hope we can bring to Bronte as well when it's our turn to go through that process.
All right. And Adrian, do you have any takeaways for our friends and colleagues in Kerr and Bronte? Any learnings that you would share with them or suggestions? Because nothing's perfect. In hindsight, you might have thought of things that you wish we'd done.
Yeah, I think for us, one of the great learnings of the construction was, firstly was to be able to use that time while the construction was happening to really be able as a BIA to kind of take a step back and take the time to put a real strategic roadmap in place that really sets those parameters and objectives about how we're going to, reopen, what are our priorities and our key pillars that we're going to do when we are opened, and how we want to be as a brand when that new streetscape and new opportunity arises. So I think for us, that was a great opportunity and one that we took advantage of. And it really allowed us to come out of the gate when things were ready to go, to know exactly what our priorities were from a beautification standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, and how we were going to ensure that we kind of ramped up as quickly as we could to get things moving and ready to share the streetscape with the community.
So you had a totally new product to market and to beautify. And you decided that you would plan ahead to be ready to roll with it. That sounds like great thinking. In terms of the things that we did, though, the public engagement around selection of street furniture, for example, was that of value to you in terms of getting public buy-in? Would you recommend that approach for Kerr and Bronte?
Yeah, I absolutely think it was, getting all those key stakeholders to the table while going through that process around planning of beautification, planning of wayfinding, planning of just that ensuring that we're creating the best journey when you're in the location is definitely valuable to have those folks at the table that use it, members, as well. Things like, as you said, garbage receptacles, seating areas, parking, all those things, being able to get that input. And then the town, who was great, working closely together to say, hey, this is where, we think these are some hot spots. These are some high traffic areas. This is where power, could be recommended to go. All those things are building blocks and pieces that ensure that it's going to be a great journey for those folks that visit there.
Yeah, thanks for that. Now, Kylie, in Bronte, in addition to the streetscape work, I recognize that we need to expand public parking, and I'm hoping that your organization has ideas about where you want it. My simple-minded approach to this is public parking is a public good. We have a policy that we provide it, and we have the power to put it wherever we want, wherever we can afford to buy the land. So has your organization among your members started talking yet about where you want it?
As an organization, I have to say, that is the one resource that we don't have a lot of here within our district, is that space that could be transformed into public parking. So we do have hundreds of free accessible spaces down at our waterfront, which really it does create that welcoming space for visitors to visit for free and park your steps to the commercial district when you go there. I know there's discussion kind of over the bridge along Bronte Road, where we do have our harbor, that there's just the beginning discussions right now about that possibly being transformed into public parking. We do have in every gateway of our community, we're about to undergo some major construction projects. And of course, we're going to need to have visitor parking within those facilities as well. But really, I think when we go back to talking about the transformation of our Main Street, I think if we can make those spaces bikeable and walkable, then it will limit the need for as many vehicles as well. So it's kind of that two-part, just making sure that people are able to access Bronte in a different way.
Oh, well, the town treasurer will be delighted with your answer. How about you, Doug? What's the parking story looking like in Kerr?
In Kerr, we're fortunate. We have two public lots, and the way Kerr was constructed, a lot of the storefronts along Kerr do have private parking in the back. We have a little bit of on the lower end of Kerr down towards Lakeshore, we would love to have a public lot down there because the spaces go fast and some of the employees have a hard time finding parking. And so we have talked with the town the last couple of years. It's hard to find land down there. And that's a solution that we're continually trying to address. So, but we usually, like Mr. Mayor, you were at a grand opening last Saturday, and it was a great day. It was sunny, and a lot of people were out, and we had to, I know I had to search for a parking spot. I did find one. I just had to walk a little farther. That's all.
I'm told that walking's good for us. However, I am aware that people who will walk 2 kilometers when they drive to Toronto can't walk 2 blocks when they come to one of our areas. So I don't know. If there's no parking at the door, there's a parking problem, is the traditional story here. Well, let's turn to what have we got that's attracting people already before we go working on the streetscapes. And let's start with you, Doug. What's hot in Kerr?
Well, the thing, we have a collective group of small businesses that are diverse, from restaurants to specialty shops. We try to get people down here through our events, and we've had markets, and a lot of our stores are locked in to shop local with the public having specials. So people come to Kerr, they're able to walk the streets on a nice day. There is an enough places to park, and everything's within walking distance. Like you can walk from one end to the other pretty comfortably. So just our amenities and the location, being it right in the center of Oakville, help attract people.
All right. And Kylie, what about you?
Your timing for this question is great because it was just last weekend here in Bronte. We kicked off our second year of what we're calling our community. So we invite local nonprofit organizations to apply to our BIA and take that funding and activate within our public spaces. So create activations and experiences that are free, that really do invite all walks of life to come and experience Bronte in their own way. So right now we have partnerships with Bandology, Oakville Green, the Oakville Public Library, Bronte Historical Society, and the Oakville Wind Association. And we've got outdoor concerts, family story times, music workshops, seniors programming, 65 days right now of programming throughout the spring and summer months that we're hoping to turn to 100 days of activations in Bronte, because we really want people to come here, visit our businesses, inject that money into the local economy, and then also really think that when they come to Bronte.
Wait, repeat, when they come to Bronte, because somehow the distance to Bronte has cut your words off.
Sorry about that. When people come to Bronte, we want them to think that there's always something. So you'll come, enjoy our restaurants and our wonderful businesses, the waterfront, where there's going to be an experience that you can delight in.
So, in reading in between the gaps, always something fun to do, I think you must have said.
Yes, and I apologize if I'm cutting out.
You are suddenly cutting out. It's like, I don't know, the moon or something has disrupted things. Adrian, how are things in downtown Oakville? What can we look forward to in the next, spring is on us, spring has sprung. Now I will caution everybody, I didn't just say that it never would rain again. My dad is a professional meteorologist, and he's always said to me, one of his funniest lines is, the weather always changes. That's why I have a job. So, but, it does look like spring is here and people are out. I've been amazed. So what's up?
Yeah, we're hoping for a string of weather like last year. I think we had 8 Saturdays that we activated and it didn't rain once. So fingers crossed. But
now,
yeah,
activate. That's an inside baseball term that we use in the BIA world. And that means there was something happening on every weekend in downtown Oakville last summer, and we're following the same this year, in fact, a bit more. So basically starting June 1st to the end of August, every weekend there'll be something going on in downtown, whether it be our summer sweat every Saturday morning, or you can come out and do a yoga class in Town Square, our beloved sidewalk sale coming back in June, extended by an extra couple of days mid-June, and 3 days of music every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, starting July 1st. So our Loved of Jazz on Friday night and our TD Summer Music Series will be now playing Saturdays and Sundays in downtown. So we're very excited to have that atmosphere to come down throughout the summer. And we've got an event calendar that is packed weekly for people to check out. And we've just got a very exciting, proud membership with over 50 new businesses that have opened in the last 24 months that are looking forward to a very, very exciting summer. It's I as a nearby resident, I've started to wonder if you've taken the old concentrate everything on one night or 2 night pattern that we used to do in the old days, like with the Jazz Festival or Midnight Madness, and you've spread it out over the entire business season.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a strategic, decision from the members and the board, that, our job is to ensure that traffic is happening 12 months of the year, not just 3 or 4 kind of main key dates or weekends. So we're getting amazing feedback from our membership on how we're able to continue that traffic 12 months of the year, and particularly in the summer, that same volume of people that used to happen on one night is now happening every weekend throughout the summer. So it benefits our small businesses. Our community engagement is high. And for those that used to come maybe 4 times a year on average, years ago now come about 18. So that repeat placemaking ability to draw crowds to downtown is something we're really focused on.
Well, it's very impressive. And Kylie, you must be already in the throes of planning for the massive visit that happens on Canada Day. Now, when I was once on the board of your BIA, and there were, I would say, half the merchants thought Canada Day was a blessing, and the other half thought it was a day of lost business, basically.
I think that sentiment remains true here, but it's actually, so it's the town of Oakville that's taken on this giant celebration for us, but we're so honored that it has become kind of this Bronte focused location. So we do encourage our businesses to stay open that day, to invite people to come in, and then during the evening hours when the Canada Day celebrations begin, of course, we welcome, I think it's about 45,000 visitors to Bronte, and through funding and through the amazing event staff at the town, we really get to highlight our waterfront and everything that Bronte represents, and hopefully create those beautiful memories for people and invite them to come back another day and shop.
Well, I will tell you, if you're watching, about if you have Canada Day plans in Bronte, take the bus.
Yes.
Come early, stay late, but use the bus. You do not want to be in traffic. I mean, if you bring your car, you won't be in traffic. You will be traffic. So, and Doug, what's ahead? I understand that Kerfest is on a hiatus. What's the plan with Kerfest? Will it come back? Or are you also experiencing a spread it out over the entire year movement?
Well, the board, we set our strategic plan, and we thought that it would be good to have a break. Kerfest will be back in 2024. And part of it's just the post-pandemic, the economics of everything, but we are going to still have Kerfest Kids, which is very popular. We have that on a Sunday, tracks over 4,000 people, and a lot of them from our area. And we did a survey. We found that 80% of the people that visit Kerr Village will return. So whatever events we do, we have an 80% chance of getting those people back again. And as far as, we try to do a little bit bigger type events. We have our 29th annual Christmas tree lighting coming up. We'll do some various markets. And we do very well on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, when our merchants will do a lot of specials, which will naturally attract people. And like we've had merchants that will add a singer or that. So that kind of takes care of itself in our area, but we're always interested in doing things that put feet on the streets, because that's part of the deal, is the street beautification, the marketing, putting feet on the streets, and any events that can add to that traffic are very welcomed.
So now you changed the location for your tree lighting to the park.
Yes, we did.
And are you happy with that? Did you get a better result?
We're very happy with it, and I'll tell you why. And thanks to the town, thanks to Chris Mark and Parks and Open Spaces. We approached him right as the pandemic started about, we were putting a Christmas tree in the square. We would purchase it, put it up, and then it would be taken down. But we thought, actually I have to give credit to Dean McLean, and I had a conversation, our board chair. One day we said, what about if we, instead of spending that money every year on a tree, why don't we plant a permanent tree down at Westwood Park? And so we met with Chris. We found a great location. Steve Worsma at the horticulture department. We drove up and saw a guy just outside of Oakville that had a tree farm, and we found a very nice tree that grows about we had to put it in as a 15 to 18 foot tree. It grows about 2 to 3 feet a year, and it's been a blessing, because the park's obviously a bigger space. We can do more activities with it. I think it's been pretty well received. And horticulture's put a nice holiday, they still do a nice holiday arrangement in the square, so people can still feel the holiday even though the tree's not there. We haven't gotten one complaint about the tree not being there, so it's worked out well.
And that is a very small square, so so good on you, good on all of you. Kylie, you changed Bronte changed the location of its tree lighting to the new Bronte Square. Do you want to describe that, and any regrets or second thoughts on that one?
Sure. So I think we know, especially something like a tree lighting ceremony that's been going on for years, people do have big feelings about tradition and location. So in years past, it's been at our waterfront in Bronte Heritage Waterfront Park. This past year, it was our 2 town councillors here in Ward 1 that created an activation in Bronte Market Square for the first time. So the BIA funded the decorations and the tree. And it was our town councillors who created a party on a Friday night to do that tree lighting ceremony. I would say it was a wonderful celebration. We now actually, the town officially has ownership over this square. So it is now a space that's permittable for events. And we're excited to bring it to life and to start to create those experiences where people have memories in that space and can really love it again. The town's doing a beautiful job beautifying, I will say. We've got lovely spring planters. We have our iconic Muskoka chairs in the square, and we're just excited for people to enjoy the space and create those experiences.
Well, I'm thrilled that the growth on the Bronte Village Mall has paid a dividend to the community. It would be it's a bad development that doesn't bring any good at all. So luckily this one has some good. Adrian, let's talk about Christmas trees in downtown Oakville. What's the wisdom of the BIA today about Christmas trees?
Christmas trees. Well, we've been able to have over the last couple of years, as you know, our large ribbon tree in the town square. And last year we introduced a recyclable, actually, Christmas tree where we replanted that tree in front of the Performing Arts Center when it was completed at Christmas. But this coming Christmas, yes, we will be all about Christmas trees. As you know, we have an upcoming town square renovation. And so this year we are looking at having a large Christmas tree in town square and having our winter village at Centennial Square. And then looking for our new planning once our new town square comes about in 2024, 2025. But yes, we'll be all about Christmas trees this Christmas, and we're looking forward to it.
So now, last Christmas, you know, some of the public comments that reached me, I wound up telling several people, well, you've got a modern tree in Town Square, and you have a traditional tree in Centennial Square. Enjoy them both. Are you saying are we going to keep doing that, or is it going to be different?
It's going to be different this year, just because for our beautification strategy, we look to kind of reinvent every 3 to 4 years. So our ribbon tree, as you say, having the best of sort of modern and traditional, will likely be coming to the end of its cycle this year. And so we'll be looking to do an interim sort of traditional tree in the town square this Christmas. And then looking to do something new and spectacular with our new town square. But yes, you're correct. We shared both of those last year. And as we believe, you know, the talk of the town that happened through that was only beneficial to everyone who had to come down and see what everybody was talking about.
Oh yeah, I heard tons and tons of compliments about how sleek and modern and fresh it was. So, however, I do know as a long-serving mayor that I can't think of anything that's ever been unanimously popular.
Yeah.
Anything, like even sunshine.
That's right.
Somebody will complain.
Yeah.
And the weather's warm, someone will want it cool. What about music? All of you seem to be developing music programs. Adrian, you alluded to quite an elaborate one. Doug and Kylie, what's coming from music with you?
Do you want me to go first, Doug? Is that
Go ahead,
okay?
Kylie.
Okay. So in Bronte, I believe it was Canada Day 2017 that the town invested in this beautiful sales stage within our park. And that's really drawn and enhanced our ability to bring music to the community. So we have two key events unfolding over the course of the summer. The first is our iconic Bronte Lake Notes event, which is every Thursday evening under the sail stage, different bands being brought through. And this is something that's being presented by the Bronte Historical Society and sponsored by RBC as well as the BIA. So it's 11 concerts in the summer. And then it's also the Oakville Wind Orchestra that's going to be coming to Bronte for a summer concert series. So this, we just move locations slightly. We have a lovely gazebo in our park in Bronte where the band plays under the gazebo and people bring their lawn chairs for a very different type of musical experience as the sun is setting. And then we also partner with an organization called Bandology, which aims to bring music to the community. So they're activating in our park for 8 weeks this spring on Saturday afternoons. Just drop in, family friendly, and it's bucket drumming. So just introducing kind of that love of music to young kids and families.
Banging a drum.
That's right.
I have a nephew who's musically talented. When he was 8, I don't know what my brother did to make my mom do this, but he must have done something when he was a kid. My mom bought his son a full-blown drum kit. And I guess it was some kind of punishment against my brother and his wife. Can you just imagine an 8-year-old with a full-blown drum kit? That's what it did to the house. Bandology, bang a drum. Doug, what about music in Kerr?
Well, we're fortunate. We have music every night in Kerr. We have the Moonshine Cafe, and a lot of musical talent comes in there. There's also above there's a recording studio. And then in addition to our events that we always usually have music. Even when we had a market, I always brought in a singer. And, when we had the Taste of Oakville this year, they incorporated in each BIA on a Tuesday night, they had music, somebody playing music at a couple of the locations. So whenever we do an event, and Kerrfest was a big, obviously, music festival that took a lot of time and effort to put on. And I'm still getting emails and telling people you're just going to have to wait a year, but it will be back. It'll be the 10th year. Actually, we started it in 2014. So 2024 will kind of be the 10-year anniversary. So,
well, that's a great last word. We're out of time. Thank you to each of you for the time and the information that you shared with us today. And thank you for watching. And please stay engaged. Together, we can only make Oakville better. Bye now. Hello and welcome to Oakville Matters. Our city calls itself a town and works to feel like a village. We're warm, friendly, caring people, and we like to stay in touch with each other. We work together to grow harmony, safety, and prosperity for everyone. Here's the question we're going to answer on this show. What is Canada's and Oakville's future in the global automotive industry revival that we think is going on now? Joining us to answer this question are two folks who worked hard with the Auto Mayors Caucus that I founded to restore Canada's and Oakville's leadership role in the auto industry. David Adams is the president and CEO of the Global Automakers of Canada. He's joining us on location from his EV on his way to an EV conference in, wait for it, Sudbury. And Brian Kingston is the president and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. And I thank both of you for the service you've given our country and for the time you're giving us today. Let's start off by trying to differentiate the two organizations. David, from location, what's the niche that your organization chases? And then we'll ask Brian to define his. And then it'll become more obvious why the automakers and your organizations were such good partners.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for the question, Mayor. Really, both Brian's members and my members have international automakers that are part of them. As you well know, Canada has no Indigenous automakers. We have American vehicle manufacturers in Canada and Japanese vehicle manufacturers in Canada. So my organization represents Honda and Toyota, as well as 13 other exclusive distributors of their brands in the Canadian marketplace. So for instance, BMW Canada, Kia Canada, Subaru Canada, they're all of the members of the Global Automakers of Canada.
And Brian.
So we represent Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis here in Canada. And for the purpose of today's conversation, of course, Ford has a significant presence in Oakville, a presence that has seen some recent new investments. So I'll get into that, but really exciting time for Ford in Oakville.
Yeah, I will never forget this dark and stormy night, standing in front of the assembly plant, doing a live TV hit with the CBC National News saying, in 2008, in the depths of the recession, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here, folks. This is the center of the future of Canada that you're talking about letting everybody die. Luckily, the government's listened, and here we are at the dawn of a new EV age. David, maybe you could summarize for people just what a big deal this is.
Well, look, I mean, the automotive industry has been one of Canada's core industries, probably second largest exporter for, pick a number, last number of years. And really our fortunes are intertwined with those of the United States. And it's been that way ever since 1965 when the Auto Pact was signed, which really encouraged first Brian's members, I guess, to lay down or expand their facilities in Canada, and then ultimately brought Honda and Toyota to Canada as well to take advantage of the duty-free access to the American market. And really, I guess since that time, it's been a situation where collectively all of our members, I think, have been kind of competing against their sisters, if you will, in the United States for ongoing investment and product mandates to ensure that the Canadian operations continue to be viable. And I think Brian can speak better to his member situation, but on behalf of Honda and Toyota, Toyota is got the only facility outside of Japan that's producing Lexus vehicles in Ontario, and Honda just recently announced an expansion to create hybrid CRVs, in their plant up in Alliston. And, we'll get into all the technology later in the conversation. A lot of people will look at hybrids and say, oh, well, that's sort of yesterday's news. But as we move towards this, down this road of decarbonization, we kind of need all technologies deployed to really generate the maximum GHG emissions reductions, and hybrids certainly play a good role in that equation.
I think they're all good. I myself am still driving a hybrid plug-in electric vehicle, the fourth iteration of that particular model, and I'm I hope in line to get the first EV SUV off the EV, the new EV center here in Oakville. Brian, the most impressive thing that I remember about 2008 was Ford telling me when I told him, hey, I want to do this, and do you mind if I use your building as a backdrop on this dark and stormy night? And they said, absolutely, we want you to do it, because famously back then, Ford was the only one that didn't want a bailout. And they said, the other guys, absolutely, everybody's got to be saved. And I said, well, tell me why, because it might be an important reason to say in the newscast. And they said, well, because without everybody else, the supply chain goes down, and without the supply chain, we're gone. And that was the magic sauce, I think, that made everybody understand finally how interconnected everything was. So lay out for us your association's vision of the next few years.
Sure, and I'm happy you raised that, because when you think back to the situation that we were in 2008 and compare it to now, I mean, we're going through nothing short of a resurgence in the automotive industry. If you look at what Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis have announced just over the past 3 years, over $13 billion, and in Ontario more broadly, over $20 billion in new investment by automakers into the province, and most of this is dedicated to electrification. So, Ford, for example, at Oakville Assembly Complex, $1.8 billion going into to turn it into really what would be a hub for EV manufacturing. So it's an exciting time. There's been some major developments, and frankly, the work of the auto mayors. You've been such a strong advocate and voice for the industry, and the industry, I think, is widely recognized as a key driver of Ontario's economy and the Canadian economy more broadly. So right now, as we look forward to the next decade, we'd like to see Ontario to be positioned to win more investment, to play a bigger role in the EV supply chain. Canada has typically had about 10% of North American auto production. This is a very unique opportunity here because of the shift to electrification and because of some of the strengths that Ontario has, including critical minerals. We might be able to actually increase that share. So that's what we're hoping to do, and we hope with the right policies we can get there.
Well, I certainly share that enthusiastic vision. David, I noticed that you're really on location now.
Sorry.
Can you fill in for me what the hopes of your group might be in terms of bringing more manufacturing, not just of assembly, but all the rest of the puzzle?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Well, you don't need to look too far in the rearview mirror to recall Volkswagen's announcement of a month ago, $7 billion facility, largest investment in Canadian automotive history, going into St. Thomas. I think that's just the start of some of our member companies playing a larger role in not only Canadian, but Ontario automotive sector. You look at some of the MOUs that have been signed between, again, Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz, as far as looking at tie-ups with mines and critical minerals developers. Also, BMW has signed an agreement with Rio Tinto, I believe, to be the sole supplier of some of the aluminum for their battery casings. I know Nissan also has an R&D project going on with McMaster University. So there are a number of different initiatives ongoing right now. And I foresee that situation is only going to continue, at least for the near term anyway. And I think, Brian and I, whenever we talk about this, this window isn't open forever. There's sort of a generational investment that's being undertaken now, and Canada, Ontario need to take the opportunity to maximize that foreign direct investment here.
Yeah. Now, one of the goals of the Automakers Caucus has been, for the last 10 years anyway, to try to persuade Ontario and Canada on the wisdom of having we had two steps to this. We said we would like an automotive manufacturing policy for Canada and Ontario. If we can't have an advanced manufacturing policy, an even bigger bucket than just the automotive. And we, of course, identify automotive as the backbone, the muscle, and the heart of advanced manufacturing anyway. And so, we don't quarrel with the results we've had today. We haven't really had that policy level of advancement, speaking to your generational opportunity here. And it's a good thing that we were willing to take the opportunity and not say, well, wait, we haven't finished our policy. So I'm good with that. But my point is that life's never perfect. And so what should we do next? What obstacles and barriers do we need to overcome? I know of one, standards for self-driving, or rather the municipal infrastructure to support self-driving. We need one. We cities don't want to build 5 different, right? We just as soon build only one. Surely everybody understands that. So are the manufacturers close to getting to one standard? And bigger than that, what other things do we need to look at?
Sure, I'm happy to address that. So as we make this transition and this transformation really to electrification and more autonomous vehicles and autonomous vehicle features within vehicles on the road, first and foremost, we need regulatory consistency with the United States. Dave mentioned the fact that we've been integrated going back to the Auto Pact effectively. And that's what creates this competitive advantage for Canada, is that we can be part of this broader US market. So making sure that as we transition to electrification, we're aligning with the United States is really important. Specifically though, when we look at this transformation taking place in Ontario, we've been successful on attracting investment, and you're seeing that with the manufacturing facilities that are retooling. But we have to make sure that this transformation includes the consumer. And what I mean by that is we've got to help Ontarians make the switch to electrification. So charging infrastructure is key. Helping them with incentives to purchase these vehicles and education, all of that is going to be really important. And I've been really encouraged by the auto mayors in the most recent work plan, a real focus on infrastructure in particular. Municipalities have a huge role in charging infrastructure, providing it at municipal parking lots and on street parking. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I think that's going to be the big challenge. We've got to make this shift convenient for Ontarians, and I think municipalities have a huge role to play there.
Well,
yeah, I think maybe, just going to say, Mayor, if I could build off that as well, just that, Brian's absolutely right. There's a lot of what I would call maybe disparate pieces out there right at the moment. There's infrastructure and, work being done there. There's work that some of the provinces, the federal government's doing on incentives. There's other initiatives from the federal government for fleets and that sort of thing. But I think the thing that's missing in all of this is sort of the connective tissue that ties it all together, because, I think as you were noting, just with respect to automated vehicles, that there's a lot of municipalities wondering, oh, well, what do we need to do to get ready? And on electric vehicles, at your mayor's conference that we had a few weeks back, I was talking to a number of mayors, and they were saying, well, I didn't realize that there were programs available to help me fund some of the infrastructure that we might like to put in. And so, all these programs are out there, but they're not really effectively knitted together. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have in this space, is that, everything that we're working on all needs to be done yesterday. And we're sort of running a million miles a minute trying to get everything tied together and working in a cohesive fashion. And sometimes it's easier said than done.
Yeah, I'll apologize a bit for that. I'm aggressively signing up mayors of every place that has anything to do with the automotive industry in order to make our voice louder and stronger. And so there is a bring the new guys along element here. And we do have that information, and we will give them a welcome booklet to help them work out You know, one of the hot issues that I know of in the automotive industry is, I think, Brian, you may like to call it, David, you too, you guys may like to call it tax fairness, but the public might see it as tax parity or something. But there's a bit of a problem between our two economies when you only look at tax burdens. Thank goodness your industry is good at looking at the total cost of operation as opposed to only a single one. I feel like the deacon of virtue here because I'm the only mayor who's cut the property tax of the automotive industry. And I'm not saying that everybody could. We had a unique set of circumstances that made it possible. And without inflicting any pain on the residential. But it's hard to, you know, it was one of those opportunities that go by and you grab it. So let's talk a little bit about the tax and the total cost of operation.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. I mean, this is key. If we're going to play a bigger role, not just maintain our existing auto footprint, but play a bigger role as companies invest in electrification and build out their North American EV supply chains, we have to always keep an eye to the US and make sure that we are competitive, particularly in light of President Biden's recent Inflation Reduction Act, a huge piece of legislation, $370 billion US dedicated largely to climate change with huge components for retooling plants and ultimately bringing battery investment into the United States. So when you put that on the table, we've got to be very careful in Canada that we're making sure that our tax environment is competitive. We've got a competitive regulatory environment. We have incentives that are on par with what you would receive in the United States, because the draw will always be to that larger US market, particularly when you have uncertainty created by trade negotiations like what we went through under the USMCA. So this is the time, and tax competitiveness is a key component of that. And we just, it all comes down to benchmarking. Make sure that any facility in Canada would attract or be as close to on par with the US as possible. Of course, we have some unique advantages. Clean electricity is a big one, but if we're not competitive from a fiscal perspective, it's hard to make the case.
Yeah, we've relied for a long time on the healthcare edge that we have in Canada. Healthcare is a very big expense for automakers in the States, and not so much here. Let's turn to the charging infrastructure. What can we municipalities look to you guys for in terms of support in building out our charging infrastructure? Oakville is a bit of a leader in having public charging facilities all over, and we're doing more. But it's kind of important that we work together on that so that we put the right kind in. David?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you hit the nail on the head, Mayor, in terms of putting the right kind of infrastructure in, because, you wind the clock back maybe 5 years or so, and the only infrastructure literally pretty much out there was the level 2 charging. And just so your viewers maybe are familiar, most EVs now come with their own, it would be called the level 1 charger. So you could plug that into your household current and charge your vehicle, but it would probably take 12 hours or something to charge your vehicle. A level 2 charger is, again, you can have those installed at your home. Those are a lot of the ones that you see at the mall parking lots and that sort of thing. Those chargers, they would probably take 4 or 5 hours to charge your vehicle. And the current sort of trend in infrastructure is the level 3 chargers. Those are the ones that are being installed, for instance, at all the en route stations in Ontario. Those chargers can charge a vehicle from sort of empty to maybe 80% full in about 20 minutes, half an hour, something like that, depending on the voltage of the charging station. So having the right kind of charging infrastructure installed is pivotal, and that really depends on, well, where are people charging their vehicle? If they're going to go in the mall and they're going to be there for 3 or 4 hours, then maybe a level 2 is fine. But if they're going up to the cottage, then they're going to want access to a level 3 charging infrastructure. And the difference in cost is significant. And also, one thing that's not talked about a lot is just the permitting process to get, level 2 or level 3 chargers in place is that, the charging providers can have good intentions to put the charging stations in place, but when the permitting and everything else takes 12 months or 18 months, it's a bit of a challenge to to execute on your plan to install charging infrastructure. So I think from my members, the one that I know that is I guess significantly involved in charging infrastructure would be Volkswagen again. They still have an interest in Electrify America, Electrify Canada, that has plans to install, I don't know the exact number, but a fair amount of level 3 charging infrastructure right across Canada. But I'll turn it over to Brian for his thoughts on that.
Brian?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just from a manufacturer perspective, you are seeing companies rolling out charging infrastructure themselves. So if General Motors and Ford have announced some big initiatives to build out charging infrastructure, not just at dealerships, but in other locations. So that will be part of the solution for sure. For cities, what's really important is going to be on-street charging, because in Canada, about a third of Canadians live in multi-unit residential buildings, so apartments or towers, condos. And while building codes can address new builds and make sure that you've got charging in a new tower, a real serious challenge is retrofitting existing parking garages. This can be prohibitively expensive. Sometimes it's just not technically feasible depending on the grid infrastructure. So in that case, for those people, they're going to need to be able to charge their vehicle relatively close to where they live if this isn't going to be a huge inconvenience. So on-street charging is really important. Vancouver's done some interesting work on that front. And then on top of that, having large-scale parkades in urban cores where you can go and charge your vehicle is going to be really key, because we want to make sure that people can go park it, go home, and not have to go a significant distance, particularly in the dead of winter. So there's a lot to be done there. On the regulatory side, some challenges still. We've got demand charges in Ontario. So when you trigger a certain usage of electricity, it can increase the cost. And there's a good reason for that, but when you apply it to charging, it's tough. If you're a small business owner and you want to install a charger to attract people to come to your store, and you're getting hit with these demand charges, it really gets rid of the incentive to do the charging at your facility. So there are all sorts of things we need to work on, but I think just working collaboratively with industry, we can identify those types of issues and address them with smart policies.
Well, I think there's probably a lot of level 2 cars out there. And I gather the Teslas are level 3 maybe. But every level 2 driver, and that's me, has got to have a little bit of curiosity about, is your car even compatible with a level 3 charger, or will you wreck your car if you try to hook it up? Either of you know the answer to how the crossover works?
Yeah, I mean, some vehicles, EVs in the past weren't compatible